Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast. On this episode, we have the president and CEO of Legendary Companies, formerly of Coca Tire, Wade Kawasaki. Now, Wade, if you don't know Wade, he is one of the most interesting guys in the industry. This is a guy that was started out basically at the age of 10 or 11 pumping fuel at his family's filling station, then ultimately got him into cars. And now he is one of the key guys in the industry, both at SEMA and at Legendary and everything else. Just a wonderful, wonderful gentleman. So we will get back to you in about 2 to 3 seconds with Mr. Wade Kawasaki, president and CEO of Legendary Companies. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Today on the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue, we have Wade Kawasaki, the president and CEO of Legendary Companies, formerly the Coca Group. Wade, is that correct? Does that sound right?
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. Thanks.
All right. How you doing today? Okay?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Had a great weekend and ready for a productive week.
Wonderful. So let me ask you, you have been in the automotive world for a long time, basically since the early 70s. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I did a little background research, and you were kind of put into this indirectly by your family had a fuel station. Is that right?
Right. Exactly. So my dad had a little Shell gas station in downtown LA, and he started that in the 70s, as you said. And so Ever since I was 11 or 12 years old, I was washing windows and checking oil and putting air in tires.
So what was that like? I mean, if you were 10, 11, you want to talk about an impressionable age when it comes to cars. So there you are, there's Wade pumping gas, and a 454 Chevelle rolls up, or a 68 Charger, or a wing car. Did you know back then, did you understand that those cars were something special as opposed to everything else on the road?
Oh, absolutely. I got to tell you, it was so fortunate that I had that upbringing, right? That we used to check oil, right? We used to check the air in the tires back then. We used to wash the windows. So I got to open up the hoods of all of these muscle cars. And I'll tell you, there was never a better time than 70s in LA. Right? I mean, that was the epitome of where everything started. And so you lift up the hood and GM, Ford, Chrysler, they did a great job of labeling everything, right? So I knew that was a 427 cubic inch, 430 horsepower, 4-speed car, right? And that was my education, right? That's where I gained all that knowledge of, hey, what engine options were available and what year cars. And then you go to put air in the tires, you got to see the different wheel and tire combinations, both factory wheel and tire combinations, which are very important now that they're collector cars. Of course, they weren't collector cars back then,
right.
But now that they're collector cars, so seeing date codes on wheels and understanding all of that, what came with the trim ring, what didn't, and what different trim and option levels. So got to be able to do all that. Then, of course, you wash the windows. You got to take a look at the interiors, if it had a console, if it had a bench seat. So really just a great education. And thank goodness, because it wasn't that good in school. So it was a good thing I was good at something.
Well, it's really interesting because, being as an East Coaster, I mean, I was born and raised in Brooklyn. And so, we used to see cars, but not in the same kind of way. And for us, California in general, especially Los Angeles, was kind of this mystical place. And as I got into my, adolescent and then my teen and then my early 20s and 30s, it was one of those things where I was like, I need to go to this place. I need to go to California because it is the hot rod mecca of the, as far as I'm concerned, is the entire universe, right? So you're working at the gas station, you're seeing all these cars come in, right? And as time is kind of going by, what was the single biggest thing that told you I need to stay in this industry, aside from already kind of subsequently working through a family, in the industry?
Right. So, my dad ended up getting rid of that gas station downtown LA. It was, that was all through the Watts riots and all the rest. That was kind of a dangerous place to be.
Yeah, sure.
And so he got a gas station, Gardena, California, and it happened to be literally 3 blocks from Ed Iskandarian's Iski racing camps.
Really?
Yes. It was also the same area where all the big engine builders at the time were all in that area. So Cunningham rods were there. I mean, there was just Arius was there, both in pistons and in blocks. So it was all concentrated in that little area. It was just a phenomenal place to grow up. I had a race car like most of the gas stations did. I had a 57 Chevy. In fact, Ed Iskandarian continues to remind me of this, but he provided me free of charge my first racing camshaft. So it was my first roller camshaft I got from Ed. Of course, if you know Ed, it wasn't a brand new roller cam, it was a used roller cam that got him another motor. But I got it free, so I can't complain. But yeah, so and it was at that point when I learned that there's a business in doing this thing that I love. Yeah. And that combined with the fact that I owed the local speed shop more money than I was making working for my dad for buying parts for my race car, I said, oh, I better go to work for those guys. So that's what I did. So worked at Service Center, which was a chain of speed shops back then. And my very first assignment was the Van Nuys Service Center store, which is right on Van Nuys Boulevard, where they were all cruising every Friday and Saturday night.
Oh, my God.
I mean, you really couldn't ask for a better accidental upbringing than being in downtown LA during those formative years. And then right when I got a race car, being in Gardena, and then after that, your first real job outside of my working for my dad is at the Van Nuys Service Center store on Van Nuys Boulevard. You really couldn't ask for a better educational experience if you wanted to get into our industry.
Okay, so all right, so now you're kind of thrust in there, right? You're seeing the cars come in, you're building a race car, you're literally in the hub of the hot rod universe down in Van Nuys and seeing cruises every Friday and Saturday night, right? But then you kind of evolved and you kind of went into the export business. Is that correct?
Right. That's correct.
Okay, so
you did a lot of research.
Well, I mean, I've been a fan for a long time, and I'm also very curious because I think very few people recognize when there is a need in a hobby, right? Or a lot of times they'll recognize a need, but they won't know how to go about providing a solution for that need. They might not have the education, they might not have the wherewithal to do it, but you did. Right. And so tell me a little bit about how that export company came about, and at what moment did that light bulb go off and be like, oh hell, I can do this.
Yeah. So I was working at Service Center, and we were having guys come in, and at the time it was primarily from Scandinavia, Norway and Sweden. And they would come in because all of those muscle cars, remember at that time, were getting shipped over to Scandinavia. They just loved our muscle cars.
Now this was pre-internet. This was obviously pre-everything. So how did you know, like how did that come about? Would guys just come in and be like, I'm from Scandinavia, this is the car that I want? Really?
No, guys would come in from Scandinavia after they bought cars to buy parts, right? So they'd come into our speed shop and they would buy all these parts and shove them into their suitcases, throw the junk clothes that they had in there away, and bring suitcases full of high performance parts, racing parts, back to Scandinavia on the plane with them. So after this happened a bunch of times, and it was happening not just to our shop, but other shops as well, I put a little proposal together for the management at the time. And I said, hey, I think we need to open up an export department. They said, no, you know what? We're busy opening stores. Business is really great. You need to focus on getting us more stores opened up. And so I, just like you said, that kind of light bulb came off. I was at home with my wife, and we were looking over this proposal. And I said, you know what? We could do this. And we sat there, we prayed about it. Then the next day we decided, hey, that is something that we're going to do. I put in my notice, and we started Exports International out of our 2-bedroom house in Gardena.
So because I've been there when I had, I was gainfully employed and then left to start my own business. And there's that period of anxiety, like after you leave a viable position and you're like, what did I just do? Right?
That's too true.
It's, and you sit there and then you stare at the ceiling at night and you're like, okay, now I actually have to make this happen. So at what point did it start to catch on? Did you realize that, oh my God, like this is now I've almost bitten off more than I can chew, so to speak?
Yeah, so what I did, and Rose and I worked at, we were both professionals. We both were in management positions at our companies. So we had some money, a little bit of money. Yeah, so I remember back then we had those little passport savings accounts. That little passport savings book. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yep. So I handed her our passport savings account. I said, okay, you got to make this last a year because we're not going to make any money for a year. Ended up, she had to make it last 2 years because we didn't make any money for 2 years. But, that was the thing where you're constantly reinvesting in the company. And really, you need an unreasonable confidence in yourself to be able to do that.
That's a great That's a great way to put that. Yeah.
No, it is. And it wasn't there was nothing to tell me that I should have been risking this and doing what I was doing, right? It was
Yeah.
very unreasonable. But you know what? We just had the confidence we'd be able to push through it, and we did. Thank God. We had our little 2-bedroom house, and that was our warehouse. And I remember the first big manufacturer that I got was Detroit Gasket. They had just started a high performance line of gaskets. I ordered my first big order from them, and the semi truck pulled up, and I saw him pull up. I walked outside, and he goes, "Hey, I'm looking for Exports International. This is the address, but it can't be here. This is a house." I said, "No, this is it." And he goes, "Well, do you have forklifts and a loading dock?" I said, "No." And he literally backed the truck up to my porch, and he helped me because he felt so sorry for me. And we actually broke down all the pallets in his truck and unloaded them by hand into my house. So I had a house full of gaskets, and kind of that's how we started. And that's really when things started to turn around. We were ordering larger quantities of products from bigger manufacturers, and those manufacturers had enough confidence in me to be able to do those things. And so, we got moved into our first building, a little small incubator space, and continue to move up and up and up, and kind of the story keeps going from there.
Keep going. Well, this is really cool, right? So, okay, so now the export business is rolling, and it's always so cool for me when I find out like all these stories of kind of like we started it, because all the greatest people, all the greatest companies, I feel like it all starts the same way. We started in our house, we started in our garage, we started in this one room, whatever it was, and then built it up to be X and Y. So going from the export business, you found the need with that, right? So talk now about the Coca Group, because how did you get involved with them? Well, actually, before we get into that, I guess my question is, tell me when you found out about SEMA.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Very good question. So, we started this export company, and we needed a place where we can network with folks, where I can come together and meet the manufacturers. And of course, working at Service Center, it was kind of funny. The owner of the Service Center at the time didn't really like us, the managers, going to the SEMA show, but we used to like take Thursdays off, get in a car, and a bunch of us would drive up, and we would be able to do the SEMA show. So I knew about the SEMA show, but this was the first time that I knew SEMA as anything beyond a show, right? I said, "Hey, I need help. I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I've got a lot of energy, and I'm going to go give this a try." And so I just literally drove out to SEMA, knocked on their front door, saw the receptionist, said, "Hey, I'm Wade Kawasaki. I don't know anything about anything, but I need some help. And I heard that's what you're here for, is a help." And literally, without an appointment, nothing, I got into the office of Don Turney, who was a VP at the time. And Don was telling me, "Here's how we can help you, Wade. Here's how we'd love to do." And he went through the whole thing. And I said, "Great, here's my check. I'm now a member." And he goes, "Oh, and by the way, next week I'm bringing together a small group of young people, because we're looking at a way to help young people in our industry. Our industry's kind of graying, and it's a bunch of CEOs and owners. We want to try to be a vehicle where young people can succeed in the automotive aftermarket. So I've invited 5 or 6 guys together, or guys and girls, and we'd like you to join. I'd like you to join that group and talk about ways that SEMA might be able to accomplish that, and be able to strengthen that mission statement to help our members succeed and prosper." Went to that meeting. Long story short, that meeting turned out to be the very first meeting of SEMA's Young Executives Network. And that 5 of us sitting in that conference room is now over 3,000 members of the Young Executives Network. It's worth, 30 under 30 comes from, there's just a number of awards that are given out. And SEMA's been able to help just thousands of young people, including myself, succeed in this automotive aftermarket. So really a fun way to get started in SEMA, and a way that really gave me a heart to always make sure that I gave back.
How old were you when that happened, when you first walked in there?
26 years old.
Okay. Do you think, because right now I think a lot of people out there understand, they know the SEMA show, because it's literally one of the biggest automotive venues on the planet, right?
It's not one. It
is. Yeah. And so like you go out there, and it's like I always tell people, and you'll tell them, you'll be like, "Well, if you're going to go to SEMA, be prepared. You're probably going to walk about 25 miles in 3 days. And if you think you're going to see the show the first time you go, it's never going to happen.
Right.
You'll see parts of it, but I've been going for 10 years, more at this point, and it's so massive, and it just grows and grows and grows. And the scope of the aftermarket keeps getting bigger and bigger, from the products they put out to the solutions that they provide. Do you think that the majority of young people that are getting into automobiles right now and the aftermarket, do you think that they're aware of just how much SEMA offers to the starting out person or the businessman of the community?
Yeah, I think they do more now than they did when I was 26 years old. I think we're doing a better job as the SEMA leadership and the board of directors of making sure that we clearly articulate it, that the SEMA show is only those 4 days in Las Vegas. We're there for you those other 360 days that we're not going to the SEMA show. We want to make sure through our advocacy, through our Washington, D.C. office, through our technology centers that we're going to soon be opening up in Detroit, through our CARB labs that we have in Diamond Bar, and soon we'll be able to replicate that on the East Coast as well. I mean, we're there fighting for this industry every single day, and it really takes that kind of effort to be able to do what we do. We're in a passionate industry. People love the products and the things that we do, and we want to make sure that that's around, at least not only just for my kids, but I'm a brand new grandpa. I can't wait till it's there. I need a strong industry for my grandson as well.
That's absolutely true. So, okay, and we're going to come back to SEMA a little bit because I want to talk a little more about that. Okay, so now you've met the guys at SEMA. You're getting into this industry. The company's going well. How did Coker Group come up? Yeah, what was your first time meeting Corey, and how did that work out?
Yeah, super good question. So as I said, I was involved in leadership in the Young Executive Network, right? Became Young Executive of the Year, was in their select committee. And then I think 10 years later, after I had done a lot of volunteer work, actually Brian Applegate, who was at the time the president of B&M, who now is doing all the acquisitions for Holley, as you know. Brian Applegate and I were good friends, kind of grew up in the industry together. And he said, hey, Wade, you should really run for the SEMA board of directors. He said, you won't win the first time. You're only 36 years old, but at least your name will get out there. So just go ahead and see if we can get you on the slate. And if we get you on the slate, campaign, you won't win, but who cares? Your name will get out there. And maybe a few years later, you'll get on. I said, okay, great idea. So I did that. And in fact, when the installation banquet, which I didn't even know really existed, I was on vacation in Hawaii when I got the call and said, hey, you've been elected to the SEMA board of directors. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
So what was that like? You must have just been like, excuse me, what just happened?
Yeah, that is exactly what it is. I mean, I had to resign myself to losing, a long time ago. So it was a super big surprise to me. I had to cut my vacation short by one day, fly back to LA. And this installation banquet happened to be at the Peterson Museum when Bob and Margie were still alive.
Yeah. Yep.
And so I went to this installation banquet by myself. My family wasn't there because they were all still in Hawaii, and did that. And then about halfway through, I thought, oh, you know what? and this was how long time ago it was, because I had to get my camera out of my car because your phone wasn't your camera back then. I went out, and as I was going back into the venue, Bob and Margie were walking out for the evening. They had had enough. And Bob Peterson came up to me and shook my hand and said, Wade, I am so happy that you got elected to the board. I wanted you to know that I voted for you, and we need more young people like you on this board. I mean, I was shocked that he knew who the heck I was, let alone congratulated me or voted for me. So it was a really a big night for me. I think at the time I was the youngest by 20 years on that board. So it was a great learning experience. Just got to surround myself with industry icons, people that I grew up absolutely worshiping were now working together on the SEMA board. So it was just a great experience. And one of those people was Corky Coker. And so we became friends. We did family vacations together. So I absolutely got to know him. And then as we continued on both acquiring companies and starting new companies, we had a group of companies that my wife Rose and I, which I know you know Rose, she was a former chairman of the SEMA Businesswomen's Network.
Yep,
she
absolutely.
was in charge of the Mustang bill that they worked on with Ford. So She was also in the industry, and so we had this relationship with them. We had a number of companies. We had just actually sold some of the manufacturing assets. This was back in 2008, 2009. So that was a tough time for the industry. We decided we needed to sell off some of these manufacturing assets. We did that. And I had to be that dreaded, consultant in order to get all your money.
You're that guy now.
Yeah, you're that guy. That guy that nobody listens to, but you got to be there. So Corky said, hey, can you be a consultant for me? I've got these wheel companies that are just doing horribly, and I don't know what's going on there. And could you help? And so I did that. We ended up having to let go some of the management over there. We took 3 companies in 3 different locations, 3 different states, in fact, and moved them all into a purpose-built facility in City of Industry with Wheel Vintage, with the addition of the acquisition of Wheel Vintage. So that was a big acquisition. Corky owned 3 wheel companies that were not making money, didn't have the economies of scale really to turn themselves around.
Sure.
When you have a founder working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's easy to make money. But now when you have a manager there who's not working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's tougher. So was able to contact Mike Stallings up at Wheel Vintage. After a long period, it probably took a year before we got that. I got that acquisition done. Acquired Wheel Vintage, moved the companies from Portland, Oregon, from Cerritos, and from Chicago, Illinois, all into this purpose-built facility that I built for Cork and City of Industry. So that went really well. Obviously, it took something that he was writing a check for every month to keep in business, something that was actually a profit center for the company.
Yeah.
Corky's deal was, hey, I just need more wheels because I need to sell more tires, right?
Right, exactly. You need tires, got to put tires on something.
Yeah, so now the wheel portion became a lot more viable, and we became partners in Coker Tire, and kind of the rest of that part of it was history. We really did well with Coker Tire. I said I would never move out to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Number one, we'd kill each other if I moved out to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Number one, I'm from LA, and I really don't belong in Chattanooga.
Right.
And then Corky, as I said, made me a partner and said, hey, I'm going to retire from the company. So I did, in fact, move out to Chattanooga. I love it here, by the way. I got to tell you, I am like the poster boy for the Chattanooga Chamber of Commerce. I mean, it's a phenomenal city. Love being out here. I'm a hunter and a fisherman. So now instead of having to travel to hunt and fish, I'm hunting and fishing literally from my backyard. So really a cool spot. And that's kind of how I got involved with Coker Group and Coker Tire.
So, okay. So now it's been rebranded as Legendary Companies, right? And you guys have a bunch of different companies, right? You've got Coker Tire, you've got Wheel Vintage, you've got Universal Vintage, you've got Phoenix, you've got like you guys have a bunch of stuff right now. So how is it juggling that, right? As the guy in charge, so to speak, you have, and with a constantly evolving and changing industry.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And so there was one little step in between all of that. So I'll let you know about that. So we came out here and took over from Corky as president of Coker Tire as he retired. And then about 3 years ago, we sat down and said, hey, Corky's kids weren't involved in the company. Hey, now's a really good time to sell. So he said, hey, Wade, why don't we see if we can't entertain a sale? And so that's what we did. I went through a process, hired investment bankers. We gave dozens and dozens of management presentations, letter of intents, and we went through that whole process to sell to private equity group. And the private equity group that we decided to go with, both Corky and I jointly, was absolutely the best guys for us to sell the company to, not only to maximize our money, that Corky and I would get a lot of money, but also to maximize the future of Coker Tire and the rest of the companies. And so when we did that, when that sale culminated, I actually took a portion of my proceeds and invested back in to the private equity company and stayed on as chief executive officer and president of Legendary Companies. And since then, we've acquired more companies. And one of the ones that we just finished up was Paragon Reproductions out in Flint, Michigan. And so love those guys. They make a great product like us. The majority of their products are made right here in America, high quality products for our collector car market. And we're going to continue. We're working on a few more right now and continue to be able to serve the collector car industry and make sure that they have all the parts that they need to keep these cars on the road.
Okay, so let's talk about that. And I know I'm kind of bouncing, but it's one of those things where, so obviously Hemmings, like we've been around for a million years. Like we live and breathe collector cars and everything like that. Right? We're seeing, and I'm a car guy. Right. Like I have muscle cars. I have the newest. I have got a bunch of cars, but the newest one I have is a 2002. So everybody's like, well, that's brand new. And I'm like, well, it's actually almost 20 years old. Right. But I've got an old Charger and a Daytona and some other fun stuff in the garage. Right. So, but we're seeing a shift.
Yeah.
And so you're having people that were into the 30s and the 40s cars are getting older. Right. You've got the 50s and the 60s cars that are still pretty solid. And now you've got the 80s and 90s cars that are really slowly starting to come into their own, right?
Yep.
So how do you anticipate the needs for the new generation of enthusiasts? And when we talk about, like when you talked about, you know, I want an automotive world that my grandkids can be in, and that they look at, right? As one of the people at the head of the industry, how do you look at that and go, okay, this is what I'm going to do now, to make sure that in 25 years or in 10 years, when you're old enough to drive, you can get into this and you can enjoy this hobby?
Exactly. So I'll answer that in two ways. The first way is, I don't know if you've read the book Long Tail Marketing. Great book, by the way. If any of your listeners are into marketing, read Long Tail Marketing. Great book. But, you know, we are on that long tail, right? The big hump of the 30s, 40s, and we'll go all the way to 50s cars are now past. But there's that great long tail that is very stable and great business.
Oh, yeah.
So we love serving that long tail, right?
Sure.
Not to be on kind of that leading or bleeding edge of those fads, but really being on that long tail. So one of the things that we're seeing is this kind of rejuvenation of 50s lifestyle. And it's not just here in the United States, and these are young people that are really getting fired up about that 50s lifestyle, but it's all over the world. So, you know, we ship container loads of wheels and tires to 40 different countries. So really big business outside of the United States, right? So that's one part of it that we still continue to see growing. And of course, collector car values, as you know, because you're a collector car guy, are going sky high.
Yeah, I mean, they're going bananas.
Oh yeah, this year, you look at what's going on at Bring a Trailer or the Mika auction or what happened at Barrett Jackson. I mean, huge value in the cars, and people are understanding that if your car is more original, right, it's going to bring more money, right, at auction. And so that's really good for what we do in our marketplace. But then, as you mentioned, the second part of that is looking ahead. Hey, what are those 80s and 90s future collector cars, and how can we make sure that we're serving those markets? And so that's what we're doing across the entire company, whether it's wheels, whether it's tires, whether it's in reproduction parts. I'll give you an example right now with Paragon Corvette reproductions. They were specialists in C1, C2, C3. We just launched a C4 catalog, so that's going to continue to get newer, right, as the collectors continue to change.
Okay. Yeah, because that's something that we get hit with a lot, right? And, you know, we have a lot of stuff that's happening now, especially when you look at the industry as a whole and you're seeing what's happening with, you know, EVs that are coming out, right? You have a company, for instance, like Dodge that makes, you know, 800 horsepower, whatever, Hellcats and stuff like that. And they just announced an EV and turned everybody on their ear. They're like, what are you talking about? You're making an EV, right? So how do you think that that's going to reignite kind of this interest in the older cars for kids and adults that might, because listen, the future is out there. We know EVs are coming. I'm a petrol guy. That's what I do. You give me a carburetor, fine. I could work with fuel injection. That's fine. But I want petrol under the hood of my classic car. Okay. So how do you think that's really going to impact the hot rodders? Do you think the hot rodders will always be hot rodders?
Well, so two things. I think the hot rodders will always be hot rodders. I think if anything, it's going to increase that, right, to the good old days.
I agree.
Perspective. So I think that's. But I got to tell you, there are a lot of young people that are just getting into this industry, that are just understanding what we do, and they're really excited about it. You know, as you know, we just got back from the Hemmings Motor News Great Race, right? So 9 days out on the road, 18 different cities, just had a wonderful time. And it was really heartwarming to be out there on the streets and seeing the kids from all ages, from being pushed around in strollers to toddlers, every age out there just enjoying collector cars, enjoying the spectacle of being out at the race. And the most exciting part of the Hemmings Great Race, of course, this year, because, I mean, the folks that win the Great Race, I mean, you really have to be good to win the Great Race. Over 100 entries. I mean, our we've had Jim Manetto to, dozens of these great races.
Mm-hmm.
He has yet to win. We've had the guys at Haggerty out. They've yet to win. And this year, to not a surprise to us, but to our absolute delight, Olivia and Jenna Gentry won. This is a
That's
20
fantastic.
and an 18-year-old girl
so good
that won the great race. I mean, that is outstanding and outstanding. And they're doing interviews with API. They're going to be doing nationwide TV interviews. And I mean, it's such a great thing for our industry. It's such a great thing for Hemmings, obviously, as the premier sponsor of the great race. And so the great race is not only getting people out there driving these collector cars instead of just putting them in museums, but also attracting thousands of people at every one of these stops and getting them hooked on collector cars as well. So we look forward to continue doing that.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay, so I was playing around on YouTube. How did Wade Kawasaki's Car Guy Adventures come about? Because there's a lot of people out there that are doing YouTube, right? I've been doing it for a million years, and it's good to see when you're talking to actual enthusiasts as opposed to, listen, I love wonderful $500,000 builds. I love going to shops.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people forget that it's the person that is saving up for that one part, that carburetor, that EFI system, those wheels, those tires. They are the backbone of what keeps the aftermarket alive, right? So the fact that you're going in and you're engaging with these people, right? How did that come about, and why did you feel the need to make that important?
So that's a great question. That happened 100% by accident. I mean, literally, we were utilizing, both utilizing influencers, and had a lot of, we sponsor influencers.
Yeah.
And, I'm at these events anyway, and it happened because of COVID. Basically, COVID happened. People weren't able to get to events. I felt really bad about that because I still was going to the events. We had a business reason to be at these events.
Sure.
So, hey, I picked up my iPhone. I put on the video. I did a Facebook Live. I said, hey, here we are at this thing, and just did that just to kind of serve our customers and to be there. And it really caught on. Our marketing department is phenomenal at social media marketing. They started pushing it. Hemmings, thank you very much, started pushing it out, and Haggerty did as well. And now it went from, where we'll get, 100, 200 views on a video was great engagement. Now it's, thousands of views, as you know. And there's something about the honesty and transparency about a guy talking about what he's seeing. And I talk about cars that we don't sell product for, right? I just, because I'm just a car guy. I'm just out there like every other car guy, just talking about cars. And so there's something about that honesty that comes about, where I'm not trying to sell you anything. All we're trying to do is say, hey, other car guys, here's the stuff that I'm looking at and that we're doing. And if you'd like to share in that adventure, that's great. If not, hey, no big deal. But it's been a great ride. Folks come up to me all the time. They're saying, hey, thanks for doing what you're doing. And so as long as they're wanting me to do that, I'll keep on doing it.
No, that's great. Because I mean, that's one of my favorite things is what, a lot of times if I go to a car show, I like going to car shows by myself. Right. And I'll walk around with my cup of coffee and just take everything in. And then every now and then stop by a car and just engage with the owners. And, and I think people forget, and, and I was in this boat for a long time, where a lot of times you would go to a show and you just see people sitting in lawn chairs. And you would say, well, I don't understand why they're sitting at a show as opposed to driving and everything. And then you look at the actual age of the person, whether in their 70s or their 60s, whatever the case is. And then you start talking to them. And then you realize they've had a lifetime of driving these vehicles, hundreds of thousands of miles. And so now is the time to stop and to talk to them and say, all right, tell me about those stories. Tell me about where you've driven the cars, why you've driven the cars, why you like what you like. And when those stories come out, it is just outstanding. It's so good. And because I think that's what the industry needs more of. It needs more storytelling. It needs more engagement with the actual owners of these vehicles that are buying the parts and buying the cars and saying, you know what, they're still cars. It doesn't matter if the car is a Model T. It doesn't matter if it's a 68 Chevelle. They still have to be driven, and they have these stories. And I always find that those stories motivate me and hopefully everybody else to get out and drive. So I think that's really a fan of that. It's a lot of fun to watch. So thanks for doing that.
No, I love it, and thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. It's an awesome story to tell, and Hemmings does a great job of telling those stories. So we'll just
Yeah.
continue to tuning in and reading the books, and can't wait.
Okay, so now I've got another question for you.
Okay.
This is about what's happening now. As far as we live in California, like I said, we are in the hot rod capital of the planet, and yet we live in a state that is, it seems, just hell bent on locking us down as hot rodders. Like every time I want to modify something, I'm like, you're killing me here, right? Like, why do I have to have why? 1975, as we know, is in California, is the cutoff for smog, right? So that's a car that's 46 years old, if my math is correct, or whatever the case is, right?
Yep.
And now we've just been introduced, and I think it starts today, about the Board of Air Research saying if you have an aftermarket tune in your car now and you go to get a smog check and we see this, you get bumped.
Right.
How do you think these regulations are literally going to affect California as a whole and us hot rodders that love to fiddle and tune?
Well, first, I could not be more thankful that I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and not in Southern
I'm
California
sure you are.
anymore.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Wade. I really appreciate that. Thanks. Cheers.
I think my registration for my collector cars, instead of being hundreds of dollars a year, I think I register my 32 for $25 for the rest of its life. So so I'm glad I live in Tennessee, but unfortunately, where the California Research Board goes, so goes the rest of the nation, right? So
that's right.
It's a very important thing for us to say up on. David Gotch, our general counsel at SEMA, phenomenal guy, great relationships. They're literally at CARB constantly meeting with them, talking through them. And in fact, when we were helping all of our manufacturers get CARB EO numbers, I'm sure you're aware of that, the executive order numbers, allowing you to pass the visual inspection, because even before the tailpipe inspection, you have to pass the visual inspection first. So those executive orders allowed them to do that. Well, the biggest problem for our manufacturers was it took CARB months to process those EOs, even if they had all the data. So we actually went in there and helped lobby so the California Research Board could hire more folks there so they can get these through quicker, so we can get our manufacturers EOs quicker. So we're really working, it's kind of a love-hate relationship, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
You got to work with them, but we got to work against some of the things that they're trying to put in place. But we're working real hard. We're keeping that balancing act there. But definitely that's kind of at the forefront. The regulatory issues are at the forefront of what we do as SEMA. And we'll continue to do that both on the federal level with the EPA and on a state level with the CARB. So working real hard at that. A lot of things in the mix-o right now. We'll let SEMA do that announcing, and we won't have Wade do it, but
that's fine.
Hopefully there'll be some great announcements here coming forward in the future.
Okay, so where because this is I think there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. Right. So if you go on Facebook, you go on Instagram, it only takes one person to post something false, and then it just, it spirals out of control. Right. So if you wouldn't mind, where is the appropriate place for SEMA for people who are really interested in what's going on to go and find out the correct information?
Right. So you can go to SEMA.org, SEMA.org, and there is a regulatory, and I forget the terminology that they use for that, but there's a link that you can get. I'll make sure that you get that link and you can get it out to your listeners. Sure. And you can take a look at what the facts are, right? The facts behind the RPM Act, the facts behind what the California Research Board is doing. And I could say it's unbiased. I mean, we are biased, but it's very factual. So it's actually what's going on. It's probably the best place to get that information.
Okay, perfect. Because I think we don't want to spread rumors. We'd rather get exactly get the facts straight and post them out and have everything, the enthusiasts go there and find out. All right. So what do you have in your garage? I gotta ask that.
Well, fortunately, we have companies that all have showrooms, so I've got a whole bunch of garages now, not just my own. I just remodeled my garage at my home. I own the property next door, so I'm going to be building a car barn, but that's going to take a while now that lumber is like 3 times more expensive than it was a year ago.
Yeah, I know.
So I remodeled my garage. got with the phenomenal people at Ben Pack Lifts and ordered 3 lifts from them. They do a great job.
Good for you.
I just assembled those lifts, me and a bunch of buddies. And I got to tell you, it's a great product. They really do a great job, and they work smoothly. I'm really happy with them. So I'll be able to put 6 cars in that garage that used to be a 2-car garage. So really helpful in removing.
I need to call them.
Yeah, removing some shop space and making a cathedral ceiling so I can lift those cars up. But I got to tell you, so we're done with they started construction in February, and I'm still waiting for my garage doors. So that's how bad supply chain is right now. But I like a little bit of everything. I'm kind of like you. I've got in Fords, I've got everything from my 32 Ford Roadster that I'll be driving in Iski's birthday party at the Peterson, all the way up to 2021 Ford GT. So it's kind of like everything in between that. Yeah, I love that car. I mean, amazing car. I feel very privileged I was allowed to purchase one, and it's a fun car to get behind the wheel of.
Yeah, they are. I have a very dear friend of mine that has an 06 and he has a 2021, and been fortunate enough to get behind the wheel of both of them. Yeah, and it's nice. You have this span of 15 years where one of them, like the 06 is just a blunt instrument. It is a sledgehammer.
It's a monster.
It's a monster.
Yeah, it is a monster.
This big, just growling, guttural thing, right? Where the new one is like you strap into a PlayStation, right? Everything comes on, and it's just to see the progression in 15 years of where the tech is going. It's just absolutely phenomenal to me. So what's next? Like you've kind of done most everything in the hobby. So what is Wade doing next?
So, I think what's next for legendary companies, we're going to continue to expand what we do for the collector car market. That's something we'll expand more into the resto mods. We're going to expand more into more modern vehicles. So we'll continue to do that expansion as we continue to be able to leverage our direct-to-consumer expertise and that of our marketing department and sales department selling direct-to-consumer. So a lot of that is where we're going to continue to go, and the direction we're going to continue to apply ourselves in, and we're just looking forward to it.
Okay,
so we're looking forward to meeting more legendary companies to join us.
Yeah. So any new products on the horizon that people should be aware of? Anything coming out that people are going to be like, whoa?
Yeah, so one of those things that kind of fits all of those builds, of course, is our wheel Vintiques. We'll have a new 2-piece aluminum wheel, and that will go all the way into the 20-inch and 14-inch wide range. And so, that's something that will take something with a very unique vintage look and feel, but being able to apply that both to modern cars and as well also the resto mod cars that are being built now.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Very
that
cool.
will be announcing at SEMA show. So don't tell anybody.
No, I won't say a word. Promise. Wonderful. Well,
my marketing department's going to kill me for that, but
well, that's okay. We'll just, we won't say anything more about it. So.
Okay. All right. Just don't, as long as you don't tell Marla that I said it, then she's the only one that will get really mad at me.
Well, I'll tell you, this has been great. I think it's, again, thank you so much for coming on the Hot Rod Barbecue. Thank you for kind of diving into your story a little bit. I know I think for younger people that are getting into the industry, I think it's always great to hear from somebody who's started at such a young age, in your case, 10, 11 years old, just the influence and things like that of how you've worked up through the industry and are now really one of the key makers in this industry, because it's such a wonderful thing. And, for all the work that you've done at SEMA and continue to do to kind of push the hobby forward and just keep it intact for guys like me and the kids like my nephew and everybody else. It's fantastic. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you. A huge fan of yours, and thank you for all that you do for our industry and all that Hemmings does. It's just really amazing. I was with Jonathan at the Greenville, South Carolina stop, and what a great guy and a car guy. He was super excited to see the great race and to see the Gentrys win that great race. So, we're going to continue to do what we're doing. We appreciate the partnerships with class-leading magazines and obviously your podcast. And we'll continue to partner with those guys, and we'll keep pushing forward. So thank you for what you do.
Oh, absolutely, of course. And, well, I will absolutely see you next week then, because we're going to a little shindig in Vegas.
Yep.
And very much looking forward to it. So, Wade, thank you again. Really appreciate you coming on.
All righty. Take care.
Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast and hit that subscribe button. And we'll come to you every week.